Meanwhile, Joe Biden being given the kid glove treatment by the media. I have to say that if you are in the center, on the right, anybody who actually wants an honest accounting from the media right now, you're not going to get it. There's a certain amount of gaslighting that's happening. You can feel it churning your gut. Okay, and what it is that Joe Biden and Biden administration will say things that are overtly false. They'll just say things that are not true. And the media, instead of being the sort of bulldog media counting every single Trump lie, instead of that, you get the media spinning on behalf of Joe Biden while declaring itself objective. And it is maddening. It is absolutely cringeworthy. And this is the same media that when Donald Trump would say something like, I have tremendous African-American support, they'd be like, that is a lie. That is a lie that he has tremendous African-American support. Okay, there is no way to gauge whether that is a lie because it's an opinion. It depends on your definition of tremendous, obviously. Okay, but they would count that as like an overt lie. Meanwhile, Joe Biden will say things that are overtly untrue, like factually on their face, baldly untrue. And members of the media will immediately spin it away because they understand their job, and their job is to be the propaganda outlets for Joe Biden. Because we must never, under any circumstances, tell the truth about Joe Biden unless people figure out that the man is a doddering, elderly, far-left facade, and that he really is not running his own administration. Right? We should never think about the stuff he's doing. We should just treat him as like, a charming old dude who likes to play Luigi in Mario Kart. That's really where we should put our focus. Okay, so last night, Joe Biden did one of these town hall events. And it is weird that we now exist in a world where the soft bigotry of low expectations for our politicians is so obvious. Right? For Donald Trump, there was some of this, right? Every time he would give a speech from teleprompter, he'd be like, that was amazing. And it's like, well, yeah, because he was reading from teleprompter. With Joe Biden, you get the same thing. It's like, oh my God, he strung together half a sentence? That's unbelievable. Look at the old man go. That's unbelievable. Right, there's a lot of this last night. Look at this incredible performance. He was having trouble stringing together coherent thoughts. But we're supposed to pretend that he is utterly with it. He's just as with it as he was back in the 80s when he was barely with it anyway. So the media's treatment of this stuff is pretty amazing. So here is, so Joe Biden had a lot of things to say. A lot of things to say. Perhaps the most weird portion of this town hall is when he was talking about China policy. So he was asked specifically by the moderator about the fact that China had been engaging in a genocide against Uyghur Muslims. And his answer was not only nonsensical, it was basically propaganda talking points on behalf of the Chinese government. And the media immediately shifted and swiveled into full-scale Joe Biden defense mode. Here was Joe Biden talking about his conversation with Xi Jinping, the dictator of China, about the Chinese genocide against Uyghur Muslims. I don't know what he thinks he is saying here, but it's not good.
And so the idea, I'm not going to speak out against what he's doing in Hong Kong, what he's doing with the Uyghurs in western mountains of China, and Taiwan trying to end the one China policy by making it forceful. I said, and by the he said he gets it. Culturally, there are different norms at each country, and their leaders are expected to follow.
What? Okay, so what he actually was saying at the end there is so crazy. Right? That's crazy. He's saying, he gets it that I have to criticize him because we have cultural norms against genocide here in the West. He gets that I have to criticize him about that, but we have to understand they have their cultural norms as well. I mean, yeah, I'm going to criticize it. I'm going to speak out loudly about it, but I mean, let's be real about this. I mean, they have their cultural norms. I'm going to read you the entire transcript of what he said, okay? Because I think that it is well worth reading. Because some people are going to suggest that this is taken out of context, and it is really, really, really not. So here's what Biden actually said, right? There will be repercussions for China, and Xi Jinping knows this. What I'm doing is making clear that we, in fact, are going to continue to reassert our role as spokesperson for human rights at the UN and other agencies that have an impact on their attitude. And then he continued, and this is the part that you just heard. I point out to him, no American president can be sustained as a president if he doesn't reflect the values of the United States. And so the idea is, I'm not going to speak out against what he's doing in Hong Kong, what he's doing with the Uyghurs in the western mountains of China and Taiwan, trying to end the one China policy by making it forceful. He gets it. Culturally, there are different norms that each country and that leaders are expected to follow. China is trying very hard to become the world leader, and to get that moniker and be able to do that, they have to gain the confidence of other countries. As long as they are engaged in activity that is contrary to basic human rights, it's going to be hard for them to do that. And then he said that the issue in China policy in general is, quote, much more complicated than that. I shouldn't try to talk China policy in 10 minutes on television. Okay, so there it is in context. Yes, he is saying that the human rights abuses are bad, but also Xi Jinping really understood where I was coming from because we just have different cultures, you see. And that kind of excuse making from Trump would be ripped up and down by the media. But here they're like, no, it's fine what he said. How dare you point out that it's bad when he says that There are just cultural differences that lead to, genocide. I mean, it's pretty incredible stuff. And that was not the only example of this, of course. Maybe the most obvious example is Joe Biden suggesting openly that they didn't have any vaccine when he came into office. Here was Joe Biden last night during the CNN town hall.
The biggest thing, though, as you remember, when you and I shouldn't say it that way, as you remember, but when you and I talked last, we talked about it's one thing to have the vaccine, which we didn't have when we came into office, but a vaccinator. How do you get the vaccine into someone's arm?
The F is he talking about? I shouldn't say that. He's so with it, man. Okay, he literally said we didn't have vaccine when we came into office. Trump says that. It's a lie. Biden says it, and Daniel Dale, fact checker extraordinaire, over at CNN says, Biden had said just prior there were only 50 million doses when he took office. I'm looking into that claim, but he clearly wasn't trying to claim the vaccine did not exist at all under Trump. Oh, you mean now you're going to contextualize? Oh, got it. Right? Because this is the way that it works for the fact checkers. When a Democrat says something that's untrue, it requires context. When a Republican says something that requires context, it's just untrue. That's the way that this works for the Democrats and their friends in the fact-checking media. Okay, in just a second, we're going to get to Joe Biden and his COVID takes. So here's the thing about Joe Biden and his COVID takes. So when Joe Biden says that we didn't have the vaccine, obviously that is untrue. There were 1 million shots given the day that Joe Biden took office. Not only that, Joe Biden knows that the vaccine was there because Joe Biden was inoculated on January 11th. So maybe it was a slip of the tongue. But Glenn Kessler at the Washington Post suggested that it was because Joe Biden has a stutter that this happened. Joe Biden doesn't make that excuse for himself. No, it's that Joe Biden is not all there. We all know this. To pretend otherwise is to fail to look fact directly in the face. We are all aware of this. That's not the end of the world. We've had a lot of presidents who are half senile. But the notion that Joe Biden is in full command here is pretty wild. Meanwhile, he continues to trot out a completely all over the place COVID policy. And Biden's COVID policy is just all over the place. He's unleashed members of his administration to say that the schools should essentially never reopen. Then he's got people out there saying they should reopen as soon as possible. Then he's got his press secretary, Jen Psaki, saying, what if we opened it one day a week? And now Joe Biden's like, well, what if we opened it all the days a week? I don't have any idea what you guys want. I don't know what you're saying. All I know is that I don't trust you because I have no idea what the hell you're talking about. Here was Joe Biden disowning Jen Psaki's response on schools, for example. Remember, Jen Psaki said the goal was in 100 days to have 50% of schools open to hybrid learning, meaning 1 day a week. Now, here is Joe Biden walking that back and just taking his press secretary and just dumping her right under the bus.
Your administration had set a goal to open the majority of schools in your first 100 days. You're now saying that means those schools may only be open for at least 1 day a week.
No, that's not true. That's what was reported. That's not true. It was a mistake in the communication. But what I'm talking about is I said opening the majority of schools in K through 8th grade because they're the easiest to open, the most needed to be open in terms of the impact on children and families having to stay home.
So when do you think that would be K through 8, at least 5 days a week, if possible?
I think we'll be close to that at the end of the first 100 days.
Okay, so now he's shifting the standard again. Do you believe him, or do you think they're going to walk that one back today? My guess is within the next week, they will walk that one back, because that's not what the teachers' unions want. That is not what the teachers' unions want. Meanwhile, he is again shifting timelines. He now says that all the shots are going to be available, right? He changed it even over the course of 24 hours. He said, we're going to try and get everybody inoculated by like July. Now he's like, well, we'll have enough vaccines to inoculate everybody by July, which means not everybody's going to be inoculated by July. So he's finally asked, when will things be back to normal? And here's Biden explaining that things will be back to normal, like in forever. Here is the President of the United States. God love us.
By next Christmas, I think we'll be in a very different circumstance, God willing, than we are today. I think a year from now, when it's 22 below zero here, a year from now, I think that there'll be significantly fewer people having to be socially distanced, have to wear masks, etc. But we don't know.
Is he insane? Is he insane? A year from now? I mean, I'm looking at my calendar. It's the middle of February, dude. You're saying February 2022, a significantly different number of people will be wearing masks and socially distancing than are now, but we don't know? So he's just talking about forever. Honest to God, what's the point of getting a vaccine if we can't go back to normal? I don't know, especially if you're young and healthy. What is the point if you are 20 years old of going out and getting a vaccine if you can't go back to normal after you take the vaccine? Here's the reality. Nobody's going to do any of this crap. Nobody's going to do any of this crap. As soon as there is any significant level of vaccination in the American community, meaning people over 65 have gotten vaccinated and people who are more vulnerable have gotten vaccinated, we're all going back to normal. We're going back to ball games. We're going back to theaters. everything is going to go back to normal. Because nobody is going to do this. This is not how human beings were meant to live. We are not going to continue doing this just because Joe Biden fears that there might be a COVID variant at some point in the unspecified future that could do damage. I hope you enjoyed that clip from The Ben Shapiro Show. If you did, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you stay up to date on all of our future content.